most of the sleep problems are physiologically and psychologically. If you're working on your behavior issues and psychological issues, but you're still having the underlying hormonal issues, you're still going to have some struggles. The best thing that women can do when they're at perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause is to
Welcome back to the Energy Fix. Today's episode is a continuation with somebody that you already know and love. Back on episode number 169, I had the honor of interviewing Irina Macare. And so she is back, and we are going to be diving even deeper today in concepts all about perimenopause, menopause, and tired but wired concepts when relating to sleep. Now, Irina is a certified sleep coach who helps busy professionals rebuild consistent sleep and overcome insomnia using evidence-based tools grounded in CBTI, ACT, and circadian biology. She's going to be really talking in a way that feels realistic, not rigid. And I think that that's important. We want to keep this conversation very grounded and not like it's a textbook, right? And so this was what I loved about our last conversation. In our last conversation, we laid some foundational work. Today, we're going deeper into the intersection of sleep and midlife hormone shifts like perimenopause, menopause, night awakenings, tired but wired energy, and what actually helps when your body is not wanting to really shut down come 2, 3 a.m., etc. And so again, if you want to hear the foundational conversation that we had, please head on over to episode 169 and catch her in full action right there. All right, Irina, let's dive into this conversation. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Janzi. Thank you so much for inviting me again. I'm really excited to continue our conversation because it
Yeah.
was a long one and we didn't cover even like we just scratched the topic. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to be able to dive deeper into this topic that is very hot these days.
Yeah. You know, it's funny when we got off of the conversation last time, Irina and I were talking and she was like, oh my gosh, we never even talked about midlife hormonal shifting. And I was like, yeah, we need to get you back on because this is a hot topic, especially amongst the people that come into my clinic. I'm sure your clinic and just in general. I mean, people are wondering, what do I do at this change in my life? So let's just get into this. Irina, let's start with the moment people really live in. Okay. It's 2 or 3 a.m. You're wide awake. You're annoyed. Your brain is subtly shifting to each little moment in life that you need to navigate or pursue. What have you found is the most common reason that this pattern shows up in midlife? And what do people do in that moment to accidentally make it worse?
Oh my God. This is such a loaded question and there are so many layers on it. And just the question, why do I wake up at 3 a.m. every night? It's a question that it's not like easy to answer because there can be so many things. And we can start from hormonal changes because like that's the topic of today. And estrogen, progesterone, and all the hormones that are affected by perimenopause and menopause are directly involved in sleep or indirectly, but they do affect sleep. There can be sleep drive issues. There can be circadian rhythm issues. There can be hyperarousal issues, being anxious about sleep and having a lot of stress in your life. And there can be medical reasons. So other conditions like restless leg syndrome or even other health issues can cause that. But a very interesting thing that people should understand that waking up throughout the night is normal. It's very common and normal. And looking at the sleep architecture, um, and there are like some speculation that people in the past they were having like a biphasic sleep, meaning they were getting their sleep in two parts, and they were waking up in the middle of the night and doing some like things like praying or like having making love or having some very low key activities and then going back to sleep. So with the normal, like with the current lifestyle, like we're expecting to live to sleep in one bout for the entire night. So just setting the expectation. Again, another thing, looking at the sleep structure, the sleep, you know, there, and I think we covered that in the first episode, but we have three types of sleep, like non-REM sleep, REM, which is so REM sleep and non-REM sleep, and non-REM sleep has three types of cycles. The non REM sleep is a little bit lighter, so we can be awakened more easy. And looking at the sleep architecture throughout the night, the first part of the night we have more non-REM deep sleep, and in the second part of the night we have more REM light sleep that is full of dreams. So it's it feels natural that we can be awakened easier in the second part of the night. And also because our sleep pressure is being consumed while we're sleeping. And uh, we are being awakened by cortisol. So naturally, we're the cortisol goes down when the melatonin goes up and when we fall asleep. And 1 to 2 hours before we wake up, the cortisol level starts to increase. And once they reach a specific threshold, that's when we are awake, getting awake. Well, if you have any disruption in the cortisol rhythm and your cortisol starts rising earlier, then it's going to be harder to fall back asleep. It's going to wake you more often. So it's very hard to say, do this or that. Like there can be multiple things and they can be like even combined. And as I was just saying, hormones have like a huge impact. Insulin, we didn't even talk about insulin, like blood sugar, like drops and insulin spikes can also cause the cortisol to spike. So yeah. The second part of your question was like, what do we do that it makes it worse, right? Well, first of all, we start looking at the clock and start counting. I woke up again. I have only three more hours until my alarm starts. So you start spiraling, and with that spiraling, your cortisol increases. So your brain interprets that as a problem that needs to be solved. So it activates the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight and flight, and keeps you awake. So instead of like sleeping, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. So looking at the clock, starting worrying, starting spiraling about like what am I going to do tomorrow? That's I think that's the first thing that people do that actually backfires.
That literally just happened to me the other night. There was a lot of energetic stuff going on with me, and I was really struggling to fall asleep and then stay asleep. It was just a really restless night in general. And I woke up at like, I don't know, what was it, like 3 in the morning because I was thirsty or something. I can't remember. But I woke up at like 3 and I laid back down. I went and got a drink of water. I laid back down and I'm laying there. I was like, it was like my eyes were so big. I was wide awake and I'm like, I can't fall. For the next 2.5 hours, I laid there obsessing about the clock and what time it was and knowing what time I had to wake up. Yeah, I was really tired the next day. It didn't work at all to obsess, by the way.
Let me ask you another question. How have you had in the past other nights where you didn't sleep because you had a party or you had an event or you were too excited by an event the next day? Were you able to function the next day?
Yes, because I was excited about what was going on.
Right. So the mind reframe, it's not that you haven't done that in the past. Like you've done and you're capable of being efficient and effective even with little sleep. So you if you can tell that to yourself is like even if I'm not sleeping, I'm going to be okay tomorrow, might help with reducing that hyperarousal state and help you relax. And the other thing is like it, you can reframe resting as a positive thing. Instead of, oh, I'm awake and I'm lying in bed, you can think resting is still beneficial because if you're lying down and you're calm, maybe you can do some breathing, maybe you listen to a book or a podcast, something that it's relaxing. Your heart rate goes down, your cortisol levels goes down, which is much better than stressing and worrying. So this is what like one thing a, a reframe that you can do to help you in the moment.
That's a really great point because you're right. Like I never even thought about that. There's many times that has happened in the past, and when I wake up, I'm excited about what's going on,
Right.
or maybe I'm nervous about the day and whatever the event is, but there's still a level of excitement, and I feel energized and awake. So that's a really great idea about the reframe.
And another, I'll give you another tool that you can do when you're spiraling. It's an exercise called and then what. So when some worry comes, then you ask yourself, okay, so tomorrow is going to be disaster. It's going to be very bad. And then what? What's going to happen? So you go down into the train of thought, and you realize that it's not the end of the world. Even if all the worst case scenario happens, you're going to survive. So in many cases, that could help again to reduce that state of arousal. So, oh yeah, I'm going to screw up the if you have a podcast interview, and then what? I'm going to embarrass myself, and then what? I'm going to feel terrible, and then what? Yeah, and then I go again with my life, and yeah. See, like
Yeah.
this exercise helps you to figure out that it's not the end of the world, and because when we are in the dark, laying, and our mind starts racing, every small thing becomes a monumental thing, and we catastrophize. So sometimes this exercise helps you realize that what you are worrying, it doesn't have such a big impact than you are thinking in the moment.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Well, if we're talking about menopause specifically,
Okay.
well, I mean, I guess technically perimenopause and menopause are different technically and postmenopause, but let's just kind of lump it all into one for right now, okay? And
Yeah.
let's talk about that specifically. What do you find as the top 3 patterns that for this age group that you see the most happening? Maybe it's trouble falling asleep or early waking or whatever you see, but, like, what are the 3 most common things you see?
It's waking up in the middle of the night. That's the most frequent one. And there can be multiple reasons. And when it comes to perimenopause and menopause, is the hot flashes and people waking up in the middle of the night sweating. And then it's not the awakening itself, it's then the frustration that comes after that. Because what you can do, you cannot control your hormones, or maybe you can if you're doing hormonal replacement therapy. You can influence that somehow. But what you can do on the spot is like you cannot control the hot flashes. You can go and change, have like some pajamas, maybe have some sheets that are cooler, have some water with that it's cold that can help you like normalize a little bit the temperature. But then the spiraling. So often we will go back to the spiraling because that's the main problem of it's not like the awakening itself, it's what you how you react to that awakening. And often people are getting frustrated or starting to worry. So stopping that spiraling, I think it's the best you can do in the spot after you take care of the underlying cause like the hot flashes. The other thing that a lot of people got misdiagnosed is obstructive sleep apnea. So the thing is, with perimenopause, with the decline in estrogen and progesterone, there more women are experience obstructive sleep apnea, and there are underdiagnosed because it behaves different than in. And for example, it can look like more insomnia, more fatigue, more mood changes, more morning headaches. So you see, all those symptoms can be caused by some other hormonal changes and can be dismissed. But basically, what happened is that estrogen and progesterone, so estrogen is involved in muscle elasticity. And when you lose it, your muscle are more flabby and they collapse and they can obstruct the airwaves on your neck and on the respiratory tract. Also, the fat, when you're gaining weight in menopause, like in perimenopause and menopause, the distribution changes. Like you get it to the waist, to the hip, and to the torso. And that can also put more weight on your airways. Estrogen is involved in upper respiratory, progesterone as well, and progesterone also has a role of natural sedation. It's like your natural value. So with that being uh, reduced, like the level of being reduced, like you're more anxious, even wake up more frequent, and also
And you said that was progesterone.
so est- estrogen and progesterone.
Yeah. Oh,
Progesterone is the natural sedative, and
yeah. Yeah.
is- progesterone is also involved in respiratory stimulation.
Yeah.
So even if it is not like necessarily something that it's obstructing, it can influence the respiration in sleep. So it manifests differently than what we are used to. So it's less snoring, and these symptoms are thought to be caused by something else. So women are not being tested for that. And because of that, they struggle and they still have symptoms no matter what they do. So if I remember correctly, uh, postmenopause, there's 3 to 4 times more women diagnosed with obstructive, like not necessarily diagnosed, but getting diagnosed, getting obstructive. Before menopause, the ratio is more like in men. Men have more obstructive sleep apnea, and as the women gets to perimenopause and menopause, the ratio is almost, and it's like 3 to 4 times more than previously to menopause.
Wow. Wow. That's insane. That is really crazy. So there's a lot of people that get this misdiagnosis and then they're treating it in other forms when in reality, so what specifically are some of the therapies or the things that people can do for the obstructive sleep apnea?
To be sure that you have obstructive sleep apnea, you need to do a sleep study.
Yeah.
Test. So you need to get to be referred to a sleep clinic where you go into the lab and sleep there, and that's the only way you can be diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea. And
Wow.
then once you have a diagnosis, then there can be from multiple way of addressing it, from CPAP to, I mean, even like if you're doing hormone replacement therapy can help. Like it doesn't guarantee you that it will fix it completely, but it can help.
Well, Irina, before we go further, I want to just talk a little bit about you and how you've ended up specializing in insomnia. How have you gotten so passionate about sleep and insomnia and the work you're currently doing?
So I shared a little bit of my story in the previous episode, and I'm trying to be succinct so we don't take too much time. But my background, like I was an IT engineer for 16 years, and the work, it's really hard. The pressure was really hard, that hard deadline. So I burned out like 3 times, and with burnout and with stress, it comes sleep problem. Like sleep is the first thing that falls when before like the body starts falling, and the hormones and all the things. So I've been struggling with sleep since probably 2011. And it took me years until I figure out like what's going on. And I've tried like so many things. In the beginning, like I was just dealing with the sleep deprivation as everybody's doing, with more coffee, with willpower, and with with catching up on sleep on weekends. But at some point, it got so bad that I fell asleep on the wheel and I got like into a car crash. Thankfully, it wasn't too too bad, so I was safe and no injury, but it was like a wake up call for me, like literally and metaphorically. And that's when I started like diving deeper into understanding like what can I do? Because I couldn't remove stress away from my life. Stress is the only the only constant that we have. But so I've learned more about sleep and how stress impacts sleep and insomnia. And at some point, when I was like just fed up with the ITs, and I wanted to give back and to help people because so people around me, because I was so excited, I was sharing a lot of the things that I've learned and was experimenting, and people around me started to do things that I was suggesting, and they start seeing results. And that feeling that you have when you're helping someone, it's like something that I cannot describe. It's like a drug, you know? And when I was like just fed up with being an IT engineer, writing code, and I wanted to make a meaning in this life and helping others, I decided to dive into coaching. And actually, I didn't initially thinking that I'm going to be a sleep coach. It was just a coincidence that I just bumped into a certification for sleep coaching from a very famous company that I knew about. And that's how I just ended up into the sleep world. And
But was it coincidence? No, we know that, right?
I know. I think the stars align is like I really believe in synchronicity and things that
Yeah.
happening to you for a reason. But honestly, like once you dive into the sleep world, it's fascinating because it combines biology, psychology, and human behaviors. And I've always been fascinated by all three of them. And I love understanding the science behind it. Then like as I've been saying, a lot of the work and a lot of the issues with insomnia, it's your thoughts and your relationship with sleep, and then how you react to things that are happening in your life. Stress, like stress, is the reason why a lot of people start having sleep problem, but then their behaviors trying to compensate for that is what perpetuates their insomnia. So we have to look at how we can break those behavior, how we can break those associations. So, you see how interesting it is, like, I don't know, I find it fascinating.
Yeah. You just said something that made me really wonder. Now, midlife, perimenopause, menopause,
Mm.
hormone shifting, all of these things changing. No, we know stress obviously can happen at any point in life, right? But like midlife time is so often associated with stress imbalances because of these hormonal fluctuations and issues with cortisol, right? And so you just talked about how stress is that number one thing that typically creates the sleep issues in the first place. Do you think that maybe that is why, well, I should say just why, part of why midlife really shows an increase in sleep issues because of this exact reason?
Absolutely, you nailed it. And people, women, when they're reaching this age, there are a lot of things changing in their life. Their kids, they're starting to go to school and they're empty nesters. They reach to a point in their career where there might be like extra layers of care. There might be taking the role of caregiver when their parents starts having like health issues and they have to take care of them. They are having like identity shift. And so beside all the physiological things that they deal with, and besides like the implication of like hormonal regulation affect your emotional state, there are also all these psychological things that are happening in your life. So there is no wonder that you wake up in the middle of the night and you start spiraling, you know? You have the physiological, the biological, and the psychological that add up. And a vast majority of our clients are they're women in this age bracket.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You've talked a lot here so far about some of the main things that really impact sleep when it comes to perimenopause and menopause. But I'm curious, I want to ask something specifically about biology versus psychology, right? When it comes to something that I hear about all the time, that so many women say to me, like, I don't even know how to navigate this. And that is night sweats and hot flashes. So, can we talk about that? Like, what's the difference between a wake up that's really caused by heat and something more biological versus a wake up that's caused by stress chemistry? Like, what is there a big difference in how it impacts that person's sleep and how they can get back to sleep? And yeah, let's just talk about that.
You want to address the cause that wakes you up. So if it is a biological things, you want to help yourself if it is possible to prevent that from happening, right? If it is hormonal imbalance, then maybe you work with a doctor to help you with hormonal replacement therapy. But as I was saying earlier, the most important thing is like how do you react to being awake in the middle of the night? So insomnia, there is a model in the literature that describes how insomnia evolves. So it's called a 3P model. So the first P is the predisposition. So there are some people who are more predisposed to be anxious, to have a light sleep, and like maybe in this case, like your biology is make you more predisposed to frequent awakening. Then there is the precipitation. Maybe there is an event that makes sleep harder. So let's say your kid is going to school and to college, and you're worrying, right? Or you have a divorce, or you have a wedding, or you have like an event that is tipping you off from like maybe you are on the edge of your stress and you are controlling it, and something tips you off, right? So your sleep crumbles. But then once that event goes away, the insomnia is being fed by the behaviors that you're doing after that. And this is the perpetuation, the third key. So some people, they're starting to drink alcohol to sedate them, or get melatonin to sleep, or actually getting sleep meds, right? And then that can cause dependency and tolerance, or they can go to bed earlier trying to like expand the time they're in bed. Maybe they will sleep more. So all these behaviors, they're actually feeding the insomnia. They're creating a problem. And our nervous system, the way it's wired is like when you have a problem, you have to fix it. And that means there is a danger. So it keeps you in a hyper vigilant state or in hyper aroused state. And that actually prevents you to sleep, because you have to be in a parasympathetic nervous system, like the rest and digest, like the and restore state. So by being in a hypervigilant state, that's actually what makes sleep worse. And then there is another thing that happens, like once you start doing all the things, your brain starts associating being in bed with being awake, with being frustrated. And it creates like a conditioned arousal. Only thinking about bed, only being in bed wakes you up. And I I can say that easily, if you have a conditioned arousal, is like if you're having no problem sleeping when you go on vacation, when you're in another room on the couch, and as soon as you go to bed, you're wide awake. So that's one side of conditioned arousal. And then how do you refer to your thoughts about being awake, and because that can create more anxiety.
What have you seen has been one of the most common well-intended habits that you see midlife women doing that actually backfires in regards to some of this stuff that you're talking about?
Uh, Initially, I wanted to say like trying more, But there are, I think like the easier one is like trying like a glass of wine in the evening,
That's exactly what I was thinking that it probably was.
because
Yeah.
the wine, it helps you get the edge. It helps you sedate you and you feel like you're falling asleep, but it backfires massively because as soon as the alcohol is being metabolized, it disrupts your sleep. It creates some byproducts that wakes you up. It affects your REM sleep. It has so many side effects that makes your sleep worse. So yeah, I think alcohol is the easier, and the wine, the glass of wine, which feels like so innocent. I think that's the most overused and the that backfires the most.
Yeah, not to mention too, the sugar content in the wine itself can really cause that instability in your insulin and your blood sugar.
Or if you have a margarita or a
Yeah, any of
cocktail,
that.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. You talked about the conditioned arousal.
yeah.
All right. And so I'm assuming that there is a difference between conditioned arousal versus someone who feels exhausted all day, but then gets that second wind at night, right? Like, is there number one, is there a difference there?
Yeah.
And number two, okay, and so there is, what is actually going on when somebody gets the second wind naturally, not a conditioned pattern?
Yeah, so the second wind is part of the circadian rhythm, is what is giving you the second wind, and usually not everybody experience that, but usually it happens 1 to 2 hours before sleep. And if you're looking, so the circadian rhythm sends signal of when to be awake and when to be asleep, and sends signals of alertness throughout the day and to sleep throughout the night. So melatonin is being controlled by circadian rhythm, and when circadian rhythm says like it's time to sleep, then it starts producing melatonin. And when we have to be awake at 2 to 4 years old, but it's not like linear. And if you want, like, I can send you an image that you can link in the show notes on how
Yeah.
this shows. But basically, in the afternoon, we have a dip, which is natural, and we always say that it's like, oh, is the lunch, is the food that I ate on at lunch. That it's not only that, it's mostly a dip in alertness caused by circadian rhythm. And the same as we have a dip in the alertness after lunch, we have a peak of alertness in the evening. And that's what causes the second wind. And you get that like regardless if you're in bed or if you're downstairs or if you're in a different phase. And evolutionarily, it was we assume that it was to prepare for the night and give you like that extra push to put everything in order and to check for predators when they're starting to come, because like that's around like when they wake up and start hunting. So yeah, that's what we're thinking that might it's not conditioned arousal is like when you repeat something multiple times and your brain associates that. It's like Pavlov dog. Pavlov dog experiments. Like Pavlov was a guy who noticed that he was feeding his dog, and before feeding the dog, like rang the bell. And at some point, he realized that just ringing the bell, the dog starts salivating because it was anticipating the food. So that's the conditioning. And we are doing a lot of conditioning in our life without thinking, because like the brain likes to conserve energy and to be efficient. And when it sees pattern, then it makes associations so it consumes less energy, and those association can be positive and those can be negative. In this case, they have like a negative effect, but the brain doesn't know. It just associates. So if you're eating in bed and if you're doing activities in bed that are you're doing when you're awake, then your brain associates bed with wakefulness. That's why like one of the number one advices from cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia is like bed is only for sleep and sex. That's it. You don't do anything in bed. You don't check your mail. You don't answer text. You don't shop or anything else. So you want to associate bed with with sleep. And part of the cognitive behavior therapies is called stimulus control, and it's exactly this. Their advice, like if you are awake for around like 50 minutes, get out of the bed, do some relaxing activities, and only when you feel sleepy, go back to bed.
And so, would that be the best way to really get out of that pattern of feeling that wiredness by or the second wind, I should say, by the evening to start to shift and change that spike? Or are there other things that they can do?
Um, I'm hesitating because based on cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia, that's the answer is yes. But based on our experience and the new wave of acceptance and community therapy for insomnia, we're changing a little bit the advice, but that's depending on the person, like how that the person relates to getting out of the bed and there so this getting out of the bed is one of the therapies that people are not compliant with. They're fighting against. And that's when CBTI backfires. So, depending on the person in front of me, I can have like different strategy to help them relax. As part of the act for insomnia is diffusing yourself from those thoughts and making space and not letting those thoughts to consume you. And you can do that by imagining some things that relaxes you, doing some breathing exercises, some somatic practices that can help you shift into a parasympathetic nervous system. So there are different tools, and but it's hard to give like a generalized advice here. So try getting out of the bed first, and if that works, continue doing it. If that feels something that you cannot do, maybe for me personally, I like to listen audiobooks. And so once I put my headsets on, then I don't check the clock on my phone. I just turn on the audiobook and help me distract myself from the thoughts and help me put like in a relaxed state. In in an hour, I'm usually falling back asleep. So for some people can be a meditation but what we haven't discussed here is sleep effort. So the intention behind what you're doing matters, because if you're doing things trying to fall asleep, then we are getting back into the hyperarousal, because sleep effort makes you hyperaroused. So it backfires. So if you're doing it just trying to rest and feel better, and as a side effect is falling asleep, that's what we are trying to achieve.
And so I'm curious because as you were talking, you talked about the overstimulation and the arousal, and how for you, the audiobook actually helps to calm the thoughts down. All I could think about was all of my beautiful neurodivergent friends out there, especially ADHD neurodivergent friends who have all of that stimulation going. My ADHD and my autistic friends who get easily overstimulated and have the ruminating thoughts. And so, do you see a difference, especially in later life undiagnosed or neurodivergent folks, that this is a really great technique to help decrease the thoughts and the stimulation by actually giving yourself a little stimulation by listening to an audiobook or by reading a book in general?
Yeah, and I don't think it's only for people in middle age, but like even for teenagers, they're been observed that they can focus better when they have like the TV in the background. The neurodivergent mind is so different than that. You have to adapt. I have to adapt most of my tools when I'm working with neurodivergent person, and I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I know firsthand how that works. And like for example, I have one client that I'm working with right now, and he told me, it's like, you listen, I understand everything that you're saying. Like, I understand that mindfulness and meditation, they're so beneficial. But like, as soon as I start meditating, like in 2 minutes, I'm getting pissed because like I cannot just sit there. Right. So for these people, I'm trying to find more mind to use practices of mindfulness in a more active way, like mindful eating, mindful walking, using more tactile things, more like connecting with the senses versus just sitting still, especially with the hyperactive people. Sitting still, it's a nightmare for them. So we we change things in a way that works with your brain. And that's the beauty of one-on-one coaching, because even in the neurodivergent world, we there is a spectrum and there are sensitivities. And for someone with auditory sensitivity, maybe listening to a book or music can be hyperstimulating, but maybe something like touch and those weight blankets can be soothing. So, yeah, especially working with neurodivergent people, it's very hard to generalize. It's easier to give like personalized advice. But very good point. Often tools are that the results of some tools are contraintuitive of what we are thinking.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just going to, especially since I know that we have a lot of neurodivergent listeners, I'm just going to share this from my own side and what I have found to be really helpful. Two main things, especially with me now being in perimenopause age and things shifting and me having to find new patterns, having routine that helps me with my brain getting into that routine, that pattern that I know what's coming. So I sit down, I get my tea. I know as soon as I get my tea, my brain automatically starts to shift. It says, it's time to calm, it's time to relax. And then I get my book and I sit there, and the book is stimulating to my brain. I'm on adventures. I'm so excited. But what it's really doing is it's calming down some of the stimulation from my ruminating thoughts, and it's also making me excited, which is calming my anxiety and bringing me back down. And so I have found that if I can get my brain into a place where I feel lighter, I feel happier, regardless if it's more stimulation, I actually feel ready for sleep because I'm into that restful place now.
Yeah. And this is a very good point what you're making, because and back to the idea that some things might be contraintuitive of what we are teaching. In my personal case, for me, listening to an audiobook in bed actually helped me deal with revenge bedtime procrastination, because I often procrastinated bed because I was afraid of the next day. I didn't want to start the next day. Second, I didn't have enough time in my day to take care of myself. So I felt like the evening was the only time when I did something interesting and caring. But because I loved listening my books, I was actually excited for going into bed. And once I was, as you were saying, like my hyper stimulation wear it down, relieved, not relieved, showed, revealed that senseness of tiredness and sleepiness that was masked by the hyperstimulation. So once I'm able to reduce that hyperstimulation, I'm actually feeling tired and falling asleep. And I use the Audible app and I put it on 15 minutes timer. So in 15 minutes it stops. Often I fall asleep in 10 minutes, because the next day when I'm resuming my book, I'm like, oh, I don't remember this. So do what works for you, even if it is against the norms. But understand that, is it stimulating you in the good way, or is it stimulating you that you cannot stop and continuing doing things?
And so I'm so glad you brought that up, the procrastination, because and I'm saying this from a personal place, I have found evenings like that are my favorite time because now all of a sudden I'm on nobody else's time clock. It is just me. I can do whatever I want and I can relax the way that I want to relax. And I don't, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to go to bed because this is my favorite time of the night, even when I'm tired. So, can we talk about when that procrastination comes up, especially for those who are in midlife, and how to really move through that when now we're battling hormonal stuff. And if we don't listen to some of that hormonal stuff that's shifting and give it what it needs, now we may be actually kind of sabotaging ourselves.
And there is one thing that I forgot to mention, and you pointed that out very well because our symptoms can get worse in midlife as we're getting perimenopause and menopause because ADHD symptoms are impacted by estrogen. Estrogen has a huge role in self-regulation and the dopamine circuits. So with the lowering of estrogen, women see like they get diagnosed more because all the systems that have used to cope and to function in their entire life, they don't work anymore, and they're like desperate. So they usually go to therapists for depression, for other issues, and they discover that they have ADHD. Or they go with their kids to being diagnosed, and there's like, "But I have all this symptoms," and then they realize they have ADHD. So ADHD in midlife, it's way worse. So I want to acknowledge that. And your question, sorry.
Oh, that's right. That's right. My question was, with this procrastination, like how do we get to that point where we're giving ourselves what we need, but also not overstepping that boundary and setting us up for failure?
That's a hard one, but I feel the key to everything is awareness. Understanding how things are impacting you and what's the underlying thing that it's driving you to do. Like let's take phone scrolling, right? Why are you scrolling? What was like the feeling behind it that made you reach for the phone? Is it boredom? Is it you want to self-soothe by like shopping? Or is it like lack of connection and you want to connect with other people? So there are some needs that are not met throughout the day, and which lead to that feeling of lacking. And first of all, the awareness, like what are you lacking? What's your behavior trying to compensate for, is the first step. But I think like the key is to have small windows throughout the day to self-care, either enjoying your coffee, like taking the time to enjoy your coffee instead of having on the go, being present like with all your senses and tasting it, feel the warmth or whatever, if it is coffee that you like, having a few breaks throughout the day for white space to tell yourself is like, I'm doing something for myself, so that in the evening you're not so depleted. And that comes also with nervous system regulation. You're laughing.
I'm laughing because it's so true.
I know.
It's so, so true. I mean, that when you just said about giving yourself white space throughout the day, there are so many times that I've been going all day long, feeling like a rock star, getting so many things done, and I feel great about it. And then I hit the evening and I'm like, my brain is so wired. I am so exhausted. And I'm actually so exhausted that now I can't sleep.
Yes, it's the
Yeah.
wired and tired feeling. And it's like you were on the go, go, go the entire day. And often you are tapping into your sympathetic nervous system to have the adrenaline and to keep you moving. And while that's not a bad thing to help, like to use a little bit of adrenaline to keep you going, you're not switching between, like we are not built to be on the entire day. You should have like small breaks in between. And I like to use a metaphor to compare yourself with a pressure cooker. And throughout the day, like you accumulate stress that you push up, or like feelings that you push down. Sorry, you push down feelings that you push down. I'll deal with them later. Or like, I don't have to react this way when some jerk makes a comment in a meeting. Or you have to self-regulate so much and you're not doing it on the spot. You're pushing them for later. Stress, using adrenaline to keep going, that your brain and your body has a hard time switching between these two branches, and you're more on into the sympathetic state in the fight or flight, and it takes longer to switch back. So if you're doing like small breaks throughout the day, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, but more often, you're creating like the neuroplasticity in your nervous system to be able to like switch back and forth. And then like in the evening, it's easier to switch back into like a relaxed state. So the pressure cooker, like at night, if you're like turning off the lid at night, like everything builds up. And then the problem is like the first time when it's silent and you're not stimulated, it's when you're going into bed. And that's where all those things that you push down bubbles up. Emotions is not only like emotion, thoughts. So you start ruminating. And you said something else that, and the other thing is that even if you have breaks throughout the day, often we we feel uncomfortable without doing anything, either from an identity things that there's so many things that I have to do that I cannot afford to take a break, or it feels uncomfortable, like it's like I cannot just stand still. You're reaching for the phone, you're putting the headsets to listen to podcasts. There is no empty space, there is no white space. So while taking deliberately white spaces, and you can start with 30 seconds, you don't have to do like 5 minutes, helps you be uncomfortable be comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? We lost the ability to be uncomfortable nowadays. We're looking for shortcuts, we're looking for optimization, that we don't know how to be uncomfortable, and we're so stimulated that just standing still feels uncomfortable. So I think like I messed up like the answer, but
No, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. And so with all of this conversation around the behavioral part, which I love, I think that that is the crux and the root of all of this. But outside of that, I want to break it down here in a moment even further, but before we do, let's talk about some general practical environment question or environment tips. And so I'm curious if we're talking about like the temperature, the light, the timing,
Mhm.
foods, like all of those kind of things. What are some of your biggest tips on more of a general
Okay. Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah. And these are like the general advice that you will hear everywhere. And especially you pointed something very well, the temperature. So we need to have like a bedroom that it's cool, and like 68, 67, if you can hold it so cool. But our body temperature needs to go down in order to fall asleep, and a cool environment helps us with sleep. So that would be like a general thing that you should do it regardless. And especially for the hot flashes, like having a cold, like a bottle of water with ice, that when like in the middle of the night it's still cold, to help with the hot flashes. And even like as I was saying, a pair of pajamas that you change, because like some women, they wake up sweat like drenched. So you don't want to go in the same clothes in the bed, even like changing the sheets. So having these kind of things beside you and to prepare, so that once the hot flashes passes, like you can go back to sleep. um when it comes to alcohol, like if you want to have your glass of wine, do it at least 2 to 3 hours before, because it gives you enough time for your body to process the alcohol, and it has a less impact on your sleep. Yes, you're not going to use that sedation to fall asleep, but if drinking wine, it's a habit that you don't want to break, and you don't want to affect your sleep, drink it earlier. Same with food, at least 3 hours before bed. And here it's a little bit tricky because, like, if you have any metabolic condition that you have like drops in blood sugar, maybe you can have a snack just before, like half an hour before bed, so that it keeps your blood sugar like constant with some protein and unprocessed carb. So the reason behind the 3 hours before the dinner before bed is that when you eat, for digestion to happen, like a lot of the blood has to be directed to your organs. And that means your core body temperature will increase. So I just said that your core body temperature has to go down in order to sleep. And that will make things worse. And even if you fall asleep with an empty belly, your digestion will be slower than on day to day, like during the day. Your food will take longer to be processed, so will stay longer into your intestines, will create like more gases. So, not a good idea. There are multiple reasons for this advice. And also try to avoid like heavy meals, spicy food, this kind of stuff. So, food, water, when it comes to water, this is very tricky because we want to be hydrated. And I know like the problem with water is we are busy throughout the day and we forget to drink water. At night, we remember because we are so dehydrated that we're thirsty and we want to be like the good girl, the good student, and to drink water to compensate because we have to drink like half a gallon of water, whatever. But then you wake up to pee. So, another thing to disrupt your sleep. So, try to drink your water throughout the day, sipping it, and stop drinking water uh, enough time before bed so that it doesn't cause too many awakenings. And I'm not saying like a specific time because there for some people can be half an hour, for some people can be 3 hours. Like if they drink water in half an hour, they go to bed to pee. So it depends. Know your body, how your body handle liquids to realize when to stop drinking.
And, I want to add on too, because as you were talking about the food aspect, high amounts of sugar, high amounts of carbs too late at night also spikes, well, and alcohol too, also spikes your body temperature because your body uses that fuel and it becomes more heated. So if you're already dealing with hot flashes or night sweats and then you're emotional eating in the evening and you're eating too close and then you're eating all these carbs or drinking the alcohol or getting all this sugar in. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can really
And
spike.
and and like people would say, okay, so you're taking away all these good things that I'm doing in the evening, and what are you expecting me to do in the evening? Right. So find activities that are you enjoy. Because I'm not going to tell you stop scrolling and start meditating. You're hating meditation anyway. You're not going to do that. What brings you joy? What do you enjoy doing that it's not stimulating and it's not affecting your body? So for example, I like to do Sudoku, or I like to color, or I like to cuddle with my dog. Even TV, it's fine as long as if you can stop in time and you're not like watching action movies, horror movies, or something that you cannot stop and you're binging. So even watching TV that it's not stimulating, it's better than emotional eating or I don't know what else. But don't try to replace these activities with things that you should. So when you're saying I should do that, that's a big, big, big sign that you don't necessarily enjoy it, and it's a very likely that you're not going to do it for long term. Maybe you're going to do it for a day or two a week while you're still using willpower, but once you cannot build a routine with that. Maybe there are people who can, that they have like a will of iron, but for general people, find something that you enjoy. Maybe it's a hot bath, maybe it's foam rolling, maybe it's getting out for a walk.
So as we're finishing up this conversation, Irina, I would love to just kind of sum all of this up and really bring it together in a nice little neat package. If we're looking at those with perimenopause, menopause, and we're thinking about best tips for them, directions for them to really help to step in and improve their sleep, what are some of the biggest things that you think are important for that individual to know?
Yeah, as we were talking, most of the sleep problems are biology, physiologically, and psychologically. So I would say address your hormone issues, working with a specialist. I know there are like emerging data about like the benefits of hormonal replacement therapy. I'm not an expert, but from what I understand, it actually makes a huge difference. So working, improving your hormones would help a lot with your sleep issues. And I would not necessarily state and say it's like fixing your hormones will fix your sleep issues. Working with HRT and behavior change would be like the great solution. It's not that you have to do one or. I think the best results is when you're doing them together. Because if you're working on your behavior issues and psychological issues, but you're still having the underlying hormonal issues, you're still going to have some struggles. So I think like the best thing that women can do when they're at perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause is to have their hormones in check, working with a specialist, but at the same time, do the work on the behavior part and the psychological part because we need support there as well. And we've been caregivers and we've been used to help others. Just allow yourself to be helped and cared. So, yeah.
Mm, I love it. I love it so much. What an incredible conversation, a continuation of that foundational conversation. Remember, if you haven't heard the first episode, go back and check out episode 169. And we'll link that down in the show notes so that you can easily toggle back and forth. Irina, where can listeners find you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah. You can find me on my website. It's irinamacare.com or on Instagram. I'm the most active or on LinkedIn as well. But my website has all the details, how to contact me.
Do you have any last words that you'd like to lay on the hearts of the listeners for today?
Well, I want to say sleep it's not something that you do. Sleep it's something that happens to you when you create the right conditions. So you don't have to try harder or you just have to create the right conditions. And you can not broken.
Thank you so much for coming back on the show. I appreciate you so much and all of your wisdom and knowledge. You are amazing.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And for everyone listening, if this episode really helped to make you feel seen, or if you're realizing that you've been trying to think your way into sleep, go check out Irina's work. I'll put her website and the links down in the show notes as always so that you can find her coaching and her resources super easily. And as always, if you know someone in midlife who is struggling with sleep and pretending that they're doing just fine, make sure you send them this episode. This is real support right here. And we are taking away the fluff, not only here at the Energy Fix, but also in all of this real life conversation that we're having. And until next time, keep spreading that beautiful energy you were born to share.